Today, I attended the Coinbase versus the SEC hearing, and I must say, my expectations were completely overturned. Initially, I was convinced that the SEC would present a strong argument for why the 12 tokens they have identified qualified as securities. Conversely, I expected Coinbase to struggle to counter these claims. In this video, I'm going to share my opinion of who I think emerged as a victor in this legal battle. Currently, the crucial decision for the judge is whether to let this lawsuit proceed or dismiss it or reach a verdict based on the arguments presented to her so far. Interestingly, the judge decided to delay her decisions, refraining from making an immediate ruling today. While we wait for the judge's verdict, I will delve into key points from today's hearing to help us deduce a conclusion. I have a hunch that the judge has already made her decision throughout the hearing today, based on the questions she was asking and analogies she made up herself. Let us explore the pivotal moments of this case and try to understand the potential outcome for Coinbase and crypto. I sat through 5 hours of trial audio version and wrote down notes from the transcript to tell you what's happening with Coinbase versus the SEC in the latest hearing. Here's what happened. SEC arguments against Coinbase were that the SEC believes that Coinbase operates an unregistered exchange by bringing together buyers and sellers, acting as a broker-dealer, a securities exchange, and clearing settlement agent. It identifies at least 13 tokens offered by Coinbase as securities, including Solana, Cardano, Matic, and others. Here's a few legal definitions that we'll need to know to understand what they were saying. The definitions of tokens as securities hinges on something called the Howey test. This is from a court case from almost 100 years ago that had to do with real estate sale of an orange grove and the contract being agreed upon for the development of the land to grow oranges. To be considered a security according to the Howey test, there needs to be an investment of money, a common enterprise with expectations of profit to be derived from efforts of others. The SEC alleges that the token developers require startup capital and ICOs and other things for the purpose of making those tokens into securities. Now, the judge in this case has already had a crypto case before her, which was a class action against Uniswap, which she dismissed. Some of her questions were intelligent and she knew a bit about crypto. They didn't need to explain a lot of terms, as you might assume they would. The judge questioned the SEC's broad application of the Howey test, suggesting it may be too inclusive. It could potentially classify collectibles and commodities as securities, such as Beanie Babies. There's a focus on whether there's a distinction between buying into an enterprise, buying baseball cards, or a team, or buying the team itself. The judge compares staking to earning interest in a bank account, and it challenges the SEC view that staking is a security undertaking. There were a couple of questions that the judge had and analogies that were kind towards Coinbase, because it said, hey, if you invest in a jersey, are you benefiting from that team doing better, right? Because that you benefit from enterprise of others and you can expect to profit from that jersey. Or if you buy Beanie Babies, that's different than buying part of the company that makes Beanie Babies. The SEC's stance on various aspects of this, they maintain that Coinbase activity is enabling token swaps and wallet services that are akin to brokerage functions. This is like saying my browser that allows me to go on the internet is responsible for everything I do on there. They argue that supportive uptime services for staking is benefiting the ecosystem and thereby meets the criteria of common enterprise. Potential implications for investors and the market. The judge acknowledges the possibility of asset purchasers of having the right of recession if tokens are deemed unregistered securities, and significant concern for the SEC. Questions arise from the legal relationship between token issuers and buyers, especially in the absence of formal contract. Coinbase argues that the assets in question are not securities and that secondary market transactions should be distinguished from primary issuer transactions. They emphasize the lack of contractual relationship between token purchases, purchasers, developers, suggesting that mere participation ecosystem is insufficient to classify token as a security. A court case has already been won on this with Ripple versus the SEC, where they lost due to the primary issuance, but they won on the secondary issuance of it. Secondary market transactions, where XRP is traded like Coinbase, did not constitute as securities. There's already precedent for this. Both parties had to distinguish technical details about wallets and staking and the nature of transaction, with Coinbase asserting that wallets act merely as a browser and staking is more an IT service than investment. And they reference the user agreement, where it clearly states that Coinbase does not take possession of any of the assets that users post as collateral to engage in staking services. That Coinbase is at that point just a contracted entity to do the IT part of staking, and that the user always has the rights to their assets, even in case of Coinbase going bankrupt, that those assets don't belong to Coinbase, they belong to the user. Coinbase also emphasized legal entitlements and risk. They stressed that the legal entitlements associated with traditional securities do not apply to tokens, and that there is no additional engagement or risk of financial loss through Coinbase staking. The staking arguments are very important because Coinbase is a large staking provider for Ethereum. They derived $75 million of revenue in Q3 of 2023 from staking rewards, and SEC has already stopped another exchange called Kraken from providing staking services. In fact, Kraken suspended all their staking services and paid a fine to SEC for doing that. Coinbase is sticking with their argument that they're just providing an IT service. Those funds always belong to the user, and the user can actually do the staking validating themselves. They're just outsourcing and contracting Coinbase as an IT service to do that for them instead. This is really positive for both Ethereum and the staking revenue of Coinbase, because this was a strong argument from Coinbase, and the SEC did not have a similar strength in their argument to rebuttal. This is not Judge Faila's first case in crypto. In August, she dismissed a class action complaint against Uniswap, noting in her opinion that Ether is a crypto commodity and that Congress and the courts have yet to make a definitive ruling whether to classify cryptocurrencies as securities or commodities. At one point, she also thought that she's overstepping her power to decide this, possibly because she expects Congress to make laws on this and it's not her place to rule. Also sounded like senators are talking to her, telling her how much she should be involved or not. A couple of blunders the SEC made. They argued that Coinbase is an unregistered exchange that brings together buyers and sellers, and that there is a conflict between them being a broker-dealer and also being an exchange, as it acts as a clearing and settlement agency. The judge asked, is that against the law? And SEC said, well, it's not illegal, we've just never done that before. Judge also asked, are there any tokens that don't appreciate because of their ecosystem? And the SEC said, yes, Bitcoin, to which Coinbase lawyers argued, Bitcoin's not so much different than all these other coins that you listed. Bitcoin also has developers and a community that help it develop and appreciate in value. They kind of shot themselves in the foot there as well. SEC also argued that the initial sale was a security when it comes to some of these tokens, but Coinbase was not involved in buying or selling those initial. They're providing an exchange on the secondary market, and on the secondary market between parties, those transactions are exempt from securities laws. The judge said that their definition of Howey is way too broad. She brought up Beanie Babies and asked, how is it different from Beanie Babies or other collectibles or other commodities? And her concern was that the argument from the SEC was too wide and could be taken to other things that we clearly don't look at as securities. Those are the key takeaways from today's court hearing. In our opinion, Coinbase came up way ahead in this with better arguments. SEC fumbled a lot, and the judge was very receptive to analogies, even making some of her own that made SEC's arguments not valid. SEC has also lost several other court cases with similar arguments they're trying to use yet again. We feel confident that Coinbase will win in this matter. We'll give it a 95% chance unless there's some new evidence or arguments made by SEC that Coinbase doesn't have a good rebuttal for. But watching today, Coinbase was just serving up aces, and there was a lot of unforced errors on the SEC side. Coinbase was pretty flat. It dipped in and out throughout the court hearing. One thing that I want to bring your attention to, if you are a Coinbase investor, one fun little stat here is the amount of shares short at Coinbase. Let us zoom in. All right. Share statistics. This is the fun stuff. If you paid attention to this metric in 2020, this is how you could have made a lot of money on GameStop. This is how I knew about GameStop before it blew up on Reddit. I came over here and I saw that GameStop was heavily shorted. This isn't like GameStop, but same idea. GameStop was shorted over 100%, which was nonsense. Here, the short is 11%. There's about 200 million shares outstanding, and out of that, 19 million are short. Perhaps people that have shorted Coinbase will need to buy shares should this case go in favor of Coinbase. Perhaps the market is being cautious, and that's why Coinbase is down slightly, because it's uncertain how the courts will rule. And should Coinbase price go up a lot, these short sellers will be forced to buy about 11% to cover their position. Higher the price goes, more likely they will be called. Their short position will get margin called, and they will have to buy a much higher price. Being a forced buyer at a much, much higher price sucks. If we all collectively buy more, we can squeeze right here, and they'll be forced to buy at a higher price. What these people are hoping to do is they sold, let's say, at 100, 150, and they're hoping the price of Coinbase shares will go down a lot, and then they can buy back at a lower price and give those shares back that they borrowed. This is an opportunity, and also should the price of Coinbase start going up quickly, then this is more of a tailwind pushing the price forward even more, because some of these investors, short sellers, will want to cut their losses and cover their short positions, which will add to the momentum, forcing others. It's kind of a positive feedback loop. Hopefully, this case comes out in the favor of Coinbase. If the judge rules in favor of Coinbase in the next day or two or in the next following weeks, we can safely assume that this will impact the price of Coinbase positively and perhaps force some of these short sellers to cover their short positions. So in conclusion, we think Coinbase made a strong argument today that will likely get the case dismissed by the judge, who also seems sympathetic and receptive. If this case is dropped, it will potentially impact Coinbase's price positively, on top of it already having an 11% short of the float. This could potentially create a short squeeze, further positively impacting the price of Coinbase shares. To stay up to date on developments in this case and other things related to Coinbase and crypto, make sure to like and subscribe to the video, where I spend many hours listening to lawyers talk and bring you the gist of it. Until next time, may the power of compound interest be with you. Peace.
Peace.